Right, good evening, members of the public, and welcome to this meeting of the Planning and Licensing Committee, and also to any members of the public who may have joined by Zoom. And as always, if when you're speaking, you make certain that your microphone is switched on. And members of the public, if you're only here to observe, this doesn't really particularly apply because we've only got a single item agenda. So when we've finished debating that, I'm sure you all have better things to do than sit in the chamber. So do we have any apologies, please?
Chairman, we have apologies from councillors Blanksby and Dale this evening.
Thank you very much indeed. Again, item 2, declarations of interest, members. Councillor Payne. So that is simply a probity one rather than
yes, probity.
Yes, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. And sorry, Councillor Gordon Brown, sorry.
Similar situation. I'm aware of a beneficial somebody who could benefit from the development. He's not a personal friend, but I'm acquainted with him like many farmers and people around here. Just to let you know if that's the case, it's not an issue that precludes me from listening to the debate tonight and making my own decision.
Thank you very much indeed. Anyone else? No, thank you. So if we could then move petitions, deputations and questions, which we have this evening. The procedure, as I'm sure certain members would be very aware of, is simply that Mr. Hodgett, the officer, will actually present the report. Then it's Pat Overton from Langham Parish Council, the ward member, Councillor Oliver Hemsley, and then finally Cush Green, the agent for the applicant. Again, technically it is 3 minutes you have to make your point, 3 minutes for questions. As I have done on previous occasions, I will be reasonably lenient, and please don't take advantage of generous chairmanship, put it that way.
Sorry, Chairman, the minutes.
I'm sorry, I have managed, as Tom has rightly pointed out, I've managed to avoid confirming the minutes. Could I please have, thank you, Councillor Cross. Secondly, sorry, I was looking this way, Councillor Beggy, all those in favour, please, that's the minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of February. And abstention, thank you very much indeed.
That's passed, Chair.
Thank you. So we can now move Mr. Hodgett on to the report.
Thank you, Chairman. We've got some problems with the technology tonight, I'm afraid, and the slides are going to be scrolled through rather slowly rather than flicking through as we normally do. So anyway, this is an outline application for up to 50 dwellings on the western side of Langham, shown there by the red line, to the north of Cold Overton Road. You can see to the north of the site is the Ranksborough Mobile Home Park. And just to the east of the site, some members may recall granting planning permission, outline planning permission for 18 dwellings, which is in that area where the yellow line is, which was allocated in the neighbourhood plan. And there is a current reserve matters application being considered on that site at the moment. Now, the new access into the approved site is just here, and this proposal is from the same applicant, and it would share that existing access, taking a spur off the road that goes into the new site there. So that's that shows you where the outline permission was. This is the red line application site. You can see the access there going into that site, and this one branches off in this direction. And that shows you, I must apologise, in the report, I think we've referred to mobile homes on Lodge Park, which is this area up here. These mobile homes here and these are all on a section of the Ranksborough called the Glade. I do apologise for that, but that is the case on that one. dear, this is a real mess tonight. This is just to show the sort of permeability of the site. This is the application site here. Again, the site with outline permission there. That site has a public footpath that runs through it onto the range, which is here, which comes out on the A606. And as part of that outline permission, there's a new pedestrian crossing to be provided approximately in this location. I'm not sure whether it's been detailed absolutely yet, but there is going to be a new pedestrian crossing there. And as part of this scheme, there's a bridge here with a parapet wall either side of the road over the stream. And part of this scheme is to build out a pedestrian footpath on the northern side of the carriageway and link to the existing footpath along the road. And then there is another public footpath that runs through here out onto the A606 opposite Church Street. So you've got access through in two directions from this site fairly easily to the village centre. So you've got Church Street down there and Well Street is just above the range on that side. So this is the master plan as it's been proposed. This is an amended plan. The amendment, the original scheme had the rear boundaries of these properties tight up to the properties on the boundary on the glade, and the applicant has now put in a landscape strip to separate that area off to reduce the impact on those properties. All of these plots along the top edge would be single story. It does suggest they would have rooms in the roof, but they can be designed such that any windows will be facing into the site rather than back in that direction. And I think it needs a careful landscaping scheme in here, that would be dealt with as part of any reserve matters, as would the detailed layout and design of the houses. And then you can see again there where the access comes in from the shared area. There's a large area of open space to be provided at the front. There's a really strong hedge line along the Cold Overton Road at the moment, which you'll see on the photographs. There's some overhead lines run through in this direction, which obviously the development's been offset from. And this is only an illustrative master plan, but the reserve matters would have to have regard to it. And it's indicating the affordable units in brown, which are in the centre there, one unit there, and one of the single story units on the north side. So the site slopes gently down from that boundary down towards Cold Overton Road. Oh dear, this thing's got a mind of its own. That's just a plan of the application for the other site, just to see how they relate. It's difficult, it was impossible to stitch them together, but just to give you an idea. So this plan shows some of the sort of constraints and opportunities. So I'll just quickly go through what we've got here. Number one says existing tree cover at boundaries of the site to be retained. Number two, which is along the frontage, vegetation on the Cold Overton Road boundaries, key to the contained visual setting of the site. Historic mapping shows that there was a hedge line along this line of number three, and this is all one huge field at the moment. And the proposal is to reinstate that hedge line down there. The overhead lines at number four, as we've said. A Lodge Park, well, it's referred to as Lodge Park, has an open setting, but we've negotiated an extra landscape strip in there. There's an existing field gate into the field at point 6, which you'll see photographs from in a minute. And then it talks about filtered views of the site from public footpath over on the other side. So this is the photograph from that existing agricultural access. So the site boundary would go from that corner down here to meet the Cold Overton Road boundary. So there'll be a new hedge along here, and the development would be over to the right. So the pylon would remain in the existing adjacent field, and that's just a view a bit further to the right, where you can see the lodges on the edge of the glade there. And then the next one is looking along the rear of the hedge, This is the Cold Overton Road hedge on this side. And that's the view of the Cold Overton Road hedge from the outside, and the field gate is just off to the left of that picture. And then that was just a Google Street view of the frontage hedge when it's in leaf in the summer. It provides even a quite a dense boundary even today, but it's even more so in the summer. A few more elements in the sort of overall design of the scheme. Bearing in mind, this is only the sort of illustrative master plan. Again, access shared from Cold Overton Road. Development set well back from the road frontage. Historic field boundary to be put back. Balancing ponds in area number 4. New open space across the front of the site. Agricultural access is retained through at this point, as well as the existing gate, as I understand. Generally landscaped entrance with provision for steep street trees along the access road. Small groups of buildings around key junctions with landmark plots. Yeah, houses to face out onto the open space, and bungalows along the northern boundary with a native hedgerow to reduce the impact on the neighbours. And then this plan shows the relationship of the site to sort of amenities within the village. The blue dots are bus stops. The green is public house. Red is village hall. Black is the church. Allotments over here. And it says other facilities. I'm not quite sure what that is. And then there's the school where the yellow dot is here. Just to remind you about that permeability from the site through that site there, and along this footpath again in this location. So this is a larger scale blow up of the access into the site. So here you've got the access into the approved site, and then the current application site would branch off at this point. And this also illustrates where the footpath would come out and be built out beyond the parapet wall of the bridge, and it would link from that point to there. That's an existing highway grass verge to there. That would be created into footpath as well. And then from that point onwards, it is an existing tarmac footpath right down into the village. And that's just a closer view of that proposal. So there would remain a 4 metre wide carriageway and a 2 metre wide footpath. The actual carriageway at that point at the moment is 5.6 metres overall. There's a 1.7 metre grass verge on the southern side and a nominal 600 concrete verge on the north side. So there's plenty of width to achieve that facility. And that's the photograph of the bridge as it is at the moment, with that overall width of 7.9 metres. You can see there's 1.7 verge here and a 600 verge on the other side. In terms of accident data, part of the objections to the scheme is that the junction on the corner of Cold Overton Road and the A606 here is dangerous, but there's no indication of any accidents within that orange shaded area in the last 5 years. And then that's just photographs of the visibility at that junction. The beauty of the junction there with the visibility is that because you're on the outside of the bend, you can actually see quite clearly in both directions. So there's no issue with visibility, and there's a central bollard there separating the two carriageways. So in terms of the main issues as set out in the report, the site is outside the plan limit to development. I'm told that the new replacement local plan, when it's finally drawn up, will draw the plan limits to development around that site that already has outline planning permission. So in that respect, this site would be adjacent to the PLD at that stage. You'll see in the parish objection that they've made reference to policies in the withdrawn local plan. So you can largely ignore those because they're no longer relevant. So you need to consider paragraph 11D is engaged, as we've discussed before. So there's a presumption in favour of sustainable development. But you need to consider, as we've explained previously, that you have to consider the scheme against all the other policies. to see if any harm outweighs that presumption in favour of providing the housing. And then there's an extract there of paragraph 11D, which is also in the appendix on the report. Just to remind you, so that it says, where there are no development plan policies, or the policies which are most important are out of date, and that is where there's no 5-year supply, granting planning permission unless the application of the policies of the framework that protect assets or areas or assets of particular importance provides a clear reason for refusing the development, or any adverse impacts of doing so would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits when weighed against the policies in the framework as a whole. In terms of the assessment of this site, officers are of the opinion that there are no adverse impacts on any areas of particular importance. It's not a conservation area. It's got no specific designation, and there are no adverse impacts that would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits of providing the new housing, as I've stated there at the top. The parish council have, or may well refer to the fact that, or that their assumption is that the emerging neighbourhood plan should be lent considerable weight in the determination of this application. Paragraph 14 of the MPPF is specific, and this is the reproduction of it. In situations where the presumption in favour applies to applications involving housing, the adverse impact of allowing development that conflicts with the neighbourhood plan is likely to significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits, provided all of the following apply. And the first one is that the neighbourhood plan became part of the development plan 2 years or less before the date of the decision. Now, the Langham neighbourhood plan was made in 2017, so it's out of time for that. So that rules out the presumption in paragraph 14 that the neighbourhood plan would carry any weight because it's more than 2 years old. And in terms of the emerging neighbourhood plan, the planning policy manager gave me some specific comments on the status of that plan, which you can read there. The plan may not be legally compliant as it's not been tested against the basic conditions. As such, little weight can be given as the plan has not been tested and may be subject to change following consultation and examination. We can't attribute any real weight to the neighbourhood plan review at present, in line with MPPF 48, which talks about the weight to be attached to emerging plans. The made neighbourhood plan does form part of the development plan, but consideration of that is constrained by paragraph 11D. So the view of the planning policy manager is that the emerging neighbourhood plan shouldn't carry any weight in this determination. So on to the other issues, the design and layout. Well, it is an illustrative master plan, but you'll see there's a condition that requires any reserved matters to have regard to it. And the revised plan does pull the development away from the glade, and with some careful landscaping, which I think we will need to develop closely with the applicant, and perhaps in liaison with the residents on the edge of the glade, because the last thing they'll want is tall trees growing on their southern boundary. It needs to be a sensitive landscaping scheme that provides some cover, but not obliterate their light and sunlight altogether. In terms of residential amenity, then yes, there's some understandable concerns from those residents who have bought into a lifestyle and with a considerable cost to some of them. It is mainly a retirement site, but as members are aware, there's no right to a view from there across this field, and the layout and the single-storey dwellings that are shown on the master plan will make the scheme acceptable in planning terms. In terms of landscape impact, you can see that the site is well contained within either the built form or that substantial hedge on the roadside, and there are no wider landscape impacts that we would normally take into account. So highway safety, the access is acceptable in principle to the Highway Authority. Sharing the approved access, the visibility is acceptable. The internal layout of the site would be for later approval, but there's no reason really on the face of it why that shouldn't be easily achieved. As I showed earlier, there's going to be a new traffic calming scheme which will involve, I think, one of these gateways where the traffic coming in has to give way to that leaving the village. And then there's that other public right of way further along Cold Overton Road, which I wasn't aware of until recently, which does give that additional permeability and keep you actually off Cold Overton Road itself. And there's no 5-year accident data in the area. Just on another couple of issues on biodiversity net gain, there is a metric been provided which shows that there would be an increase of 53% in habitat units and 15% in hedgerow units. So they both exceed the 10% that the Environment Act would require when the final legislation is brought into account. And just following on from the discussion you had at your meeting last week about electric vehicle charging being provided, we did check up on that, and the new building regulations come into force in June this year, which will require electric vehicle charging to be provided in all new residential development. So in conclusion, this is sustainable development where there's a presumption in favour. There are no technical or other constraints to the development, so it's recommended for approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Hodgett. So I will ask the Langham Parish Council representative, Pat Owen, to come forward.
As a member of Langham Parish Council, I know nothing of the planned limits of development being redefined. So according to us, this development is significantly outside the PLD. So I just want to rectify that.
Before you start on your delegation, in that case, I'll just ask Mr. Hodgett, that presumably was advice from the planning manager, was it?
Well, the site is quite a way outside the planned limits to development in the current development plan. That is true, but all I pointed out was that when the new Rutland local plan is prepared, the planned limits will be redrawn to include that site that already has planning permission adjacent to this one. So this one would, at that point, be adjacent to the planned limits. So it's not now, but it
would still be outside the planned limits,
yeah,
but it would be adjacent to.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, I think we're reasonably clear now.
Right, but my understanding is that the Rutland local plan is a long way from being made, and so we shouldn't be considering what might be in place in a few years' time. What we should be considering is what is in place now, and it is significantly outside the PLD at this moment.
I think we've made the position clear. Yes. So if you would like to start when you're ready, and the time starts when you start.
Thank you. There was a recent judicial review that stated that presumption in favour of development isn't a golden thread running through the National Planning Policy Framework, but it merely runs through planning decision making. What this means is that paragraph 11B is not a trump card that means that the rest of the NPPF paragraphs can be ignored. Indeed, paragraph 14 of the NPPF, which Mr. Hodgett has mentioned, points out that presumption in favour of development doesn't apply if a neighbourhood plan can fulfil 4 criteria, and I've put them in a slightly different order. The first criterion is that the local planning authority, yourselves, has at least a 3-year supply of deliverable housing, and you have indeed 3.5 years, so that criterion is met. It also says that the local planning authority's housing delivery over the past 3 years must have been at least 45% of that was required. And indeed, you smashed that because it was 160% of what was required. So that has been met. It then goes on to say that the neighbourhood plan policies must meet the identified housing requirement, and the latest neighbourhood plan has been told to provide 46 houses, 46 in 20 years, and we have allowed for 51 in 20 years, of which 18 have already been given permission and 15 are windfall. Final point is that the neighbourhood plan is 2 years old. Well, the 2022 Langham neighbourhood plan, which replaces the 2017 plan, is, as we speak, after 18 months of development, is now with Rutland County Council. The SEA is there, the basic condition statement is there, the Langham neighbourhood plan is there, all of the support documents are there. It has been seen by Rutland County Council and commented on, but we're now at the very late stages. And the next stage after this consultation would be going to National Assessor. And according to the NPPF, it says that a neighbourhood plan at this late stage of development should be considered in these circumstances. So, with all 4 conditions of paragraph 14 being fulfilled, presumption in favour of development can't be a consideration in this instance, and the application can therefore be assessed in the normal way. And this site is not suitable for development, and nor is the number of houses a requirement for Langham. It is a small village. This site is not a preferred site in the new Langham neighbourhood plan or in the previous Langham neighbourhood plan, and so is not eligible for development. It is situated a long way outside the planned limits of development, in the middle of the countryside, which is a protected national and local, it's protected by the national and local policies. It contravenes policies that call for the protection of green infrastructure and wildlife habitat, and it certainly can't deliver a net biodiversity gain, which is something that's very important and emerging at the moment. And finally, I would suggest that this development is not sustainable. Increasing the number of houses in our village by a full 10% in one fell swoop is going to overburden the already fragile infrastructure, which includes doctors, schools, traffic and congestion, and sewage works. And so it's therefore not a sustainable amount of buildings to be put into Langham at this time. So we ask this committee to use planning law to refuse this application and allow the new Langham neighbourhood plan carefully to guide the gradual and sustainable growth of our village over the next 20 years. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Members, you have, oh, sorry, if you'd like to say there, you may have some questions coming your way in a moment. Members, any questions? Councillor Andrew Brown.
You mentioned about the site being protected under various different national policies. Can you just expand on that a little bit?
In the NPPF, in your local plan, your emerging local plan, and indeed in the core strategy in the SAPDP, it says the open countryside must be protected unless there is a reason for it to be developed. And my suggestion is there is no reason for it to be developed, and therefore it's open countryside and should be protected. We have a conservation village councillor, and that conservation village is important to maintain its setting in order to maintain that conservation. And slowly but surely, it seems that development is wanting to erode that setting. Thank you, Councillor.
Sorry, I pressed the wrong button. Any other members? Councillor Gordon Brown.
Chairman, can I just ask on the question of the neighbourhood plan? I presume your neighbourhood plan will have to go for regulation 16 consultation before it goes to the inspector.
If you could remind me what regulation 16 is, Councillor Brown.
Regulation 16 is where you issue it to all the statutory consultees.
It is in the middle of regulation 16 now. It has been issued to stakeholders.
Right, so it's gone to Reg 16, but
Yes.
it hasn't had any feedback on Reg 16.
We've had feedback from Natural England, the Environment Agency, and Historical England when we did the consultation over Christmas, and they gave us comments, and all of those comments have been reproduced in the basic condition statement and in the SEA and in the LNP. And all of those statements congratulate us on covering the appropriate points, and nobody suggested we've missed anything important. In fact, we were praised for having biodiversity and energy generation, and also building that is energy efficient.
Can I just be clear? When is the Reg 16 finished?
It's underway now. It should be finished in April, early April, first.
So it's not complete.
April. Not completed.
Also,
No.
can I ask, have you seen the document, the biodiversity net gain document
Yes.
provided by a developer?
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that?
Net biodiversity gain.
Yes.
In the neighbourhood plan, we
No,
have.
in the document on this particular application.
I haven't seen the plan for it. No, I haven't
Okay.
read that.
It has been, it's on the website. And I think that was a reference that you made, Mr. Hodgett, 53% gain in habitat and 16% gain in hedgerow is what the
Right.
developer has said,
Okay.
based on the matrix which the DEFRA has come up with, I believe.
Yes, it would be the matrix that's required as part of the Environment Act, and but the scheme that's been submitted has been checked by our ecology consultants, and they're content that it's accurate.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any other member? I had one question. As a layman, I find it very difficult to follow the legal arguments whether para 14 actually overrides para 11, which is what the officer's presentation suggested. And I wondered if you'd taken any legal advice, because I realise it can be a matter of interpretation.
I did speak to somebody who has in the past been a national assessor and asked the situation there. And they said quite clearly that there are 4 criterion. Do you meet all 4 criterion? The unarguably correct. And the 4th one, which is about the NPPF, is a matter actually of timing, because the NPP, sorry, not the NPPF, the neighbourhood plan. The neighbourhood plan is now at a late stage. And my sense, Chairman, is that it feels a little bit like a race at the moment between the developers and Langham Parish Council and its community, because our neighbourhood plan is being made, it's almost there, and because it's quite a long and bureaucratic process, it's taking us a long time to get there. The developers don't have to go through such a bureaucratic process, and they are racing us to the deadline, I feel. And in fairness, I feel the neighbourhood plan as it stands, the 2022, is valid. Therefore, it meets the 4th condition that is required for you to ignore presumption in favour of development.
Yes, it does seem to come down to a matter of dates. Well, thank you very much indeed. If there are no further questions from members, and then I'll ask the ward member, Councillor Oliver Hemsley, to come forward, please. Same applies.
Thank you very much, Chair. This application has been brought forward due to the position that Rutland is in with no local plan. And whilst I fully understand the difficulty that you as a committee have to make decisions on such matters, I would ask that you consider the application in the round of Rutland. The application is clearly an open countryside, as we would describe it, and is not even abutting the current planned limits of development, but abutting a site that has recently been given permission on this basis. As if a landowner, I wish to encourage urban sprawl, I'd be promoting the land linked first. Is this the message that we want to be sending to our developers, and is it the best use of greenfield sites? Does this under Section 8 of the NPPF promoting health and safety communities? Paragraph 92 should aim to achieve healthy, inclusive and safe places. Can a place that is further away from the school, the local village hall, the public house and the 2 churches than any other development be classed as inclusive? And the only link on foot, I've just been told there's a second link, but I will cover that in a second. The only link on foot would be through the recently approved development that we've just seen. The suggestion that you could use the alternative footpath and come out on the A606 opposite Church Street would be for the quick and the very brave only, having crossed that road on a number of occasions. The issue with this rather extended link into the hub of the community will increase the potential reliance on the car. Paragraph 98, existing open space. This site is on the edge of the village that has clearly spent a long time working on a neighbourhood plan and considered sites as per the guidelines and excluded it from being available for development. Section 15, conserving and enhancing the natural environment. Paragraph 174, planning policies on and decisions should contribute to and enhance the natural and local environment. Protecting and enhancing valued landscape biodiversity, recognising the intrinsic character and beauty of the countryside and the wider benefits from natural capital and ecosystem services. The C doesn't apply because we're not near the coast. D, minimising impacts on providing net gains for biodiversity, including by establishing coherent ecological networks that are more resilient to current and future pressures. This is an interesting point. As I mentioned earlier, there are 2 sites that are in this which I'm sure you remember, the recent solar farm application and the other application for houses. My question is, can we be certain the combination of these three sites will be able to demonstrate minimising impacts, or could it be a pressure that will sadly diminish the net gain on biodiversity as an overall? Langham have a current neighbourhood plan and have spent many hours gathering information and collating this. And the village is now on the refresh of the plan. And due to the timing of this application, there are questions around the weight that this should carry. And this has been covered by Councillor Ovington. We as county councillors support the development of neighbourhood plans and have extolled the benefits that can be given to communities that have them. Yet we are in real danger of saying that even though Langham have committed all this time and effort working with the community and gathering the views of the community, and I know that even one of the planning committee is on neighbourhood planning champion, do we want to send a message to all these villages and communities that having carried out this work that it has no value? We should give significant weight to any neighbourhood plan that has been made, and we should increase weight to any neighbourhood plan as it nears this point. Langham has a current neighbourhood plan, and this site is outside the plan, so should not have weight. Even in the new emerging plans is not included, so still should not be given any weight. Langham has allocated space for more homes than it was required to. The requirement was 46, and we've allocated 51 sites. And we're being asked to extend this by nearly 100% increase. I ask that, as always, the decision is taken with consideration, and I also understand that the developers are looking closely at Rutland, as we have no local plan. We need to consider each development with a long-term view of the county in mind, and what will be the unintended consequences if we allow these developments to push the envelope on what planned limits of development mean. And if we're not careful, we will negate the point of having any planned limits of development, and this development is pushing an already stretched envelope. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Members, you have 3 minutes to ask Councillor Hemsley anything you wish. You seem to have silenced them all completely. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. And if I could ask Mr. Green to come forward on behalf of the agent, please. When you're ready, Mr. Green, that's fine.
Thank you. Good evening, councillors, and thank you for the opportunity to address you. My name is Chris Green. I'm a Chartered Town Planner and Associate for Andrew Granger and Company, and the agent for Langton Homes. The application before you this evening seeks to deliver up to 50 residential dwellings with associated access, open space and drainage infrastructure on a site that adjoins the existing and committed built form of Langham. The village is one of the local service centres identified within current policy, which are to support Oakham and Uppingham in the delivery of new development in the presence of an ongoing national and local housing crisis. As such, and as confirmed by the officer within his thorough report, Langham is a sustainable location for growth. I'll try not to dwell on the point. However, members of the committee will be well aware the authority cannot currently identify a sufficient supply of housing land, and therefore the presumption in favour of sustainable development in accordance with para 11D of the NPPF will apply. This application looks to meet the identified need for Langham through a comprehensive delivery of new housing within walking distance of a range of village amenities. The scheme includes a proportion of bungalows, as well as the much needed provision of affordable housing in line with council policy. The illustrative layout presented to you has been carefully designed to ensure that a considered and sensitive approach is achieved that will relate well with the existing settlement edge. This includes the provision of a significant buffer to the northern boundary where the site adjoins the properties on the glade, and a substantial net gain in biodiversity habitats across the site well in excess of the target set out in the Environment Act. In addition, the scheme provides a safe new pedestrian access point directly onto Cold Overton Road through a 2-metre footway that creates a circular walk and further enhances connectivity through this part of the village. A new village gateway will also be provided to create a feature entrance and the added benefit of assisting reduce driver speeds. I would emphasise the planning officer's statement that there have been no technical objections from the statutory consultees through the consultation, with all aspects of the development considered acceptable subject to the agreed mitigations and conditions. Assessed as required under the guidance of the NPPF, there are significant benefits accruing from this proposal: housing supply, ecological gain, highways improvements, and financial contributions to local services through the SIL. In balance, there are no material issues that can be considered to outweigh these benefits significantly and demonstrably. As such, we fully support the officer's professional recommendation and respectfully request that the committee approve the application before you this evening. Thank you again for the opportunity to address you, and I'm happy to try and answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Green. Members, any questions? Councillor Cross.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Greaves or Green? Green. Hearing's not too good. I look at your plan here and I note you're going to do this biodiversity gain. However, the planting of a few saplings and some hedge whips aren't going to really do much for the biodiversity in the first few years, are they?
So obviously the landscaping plan is subject to reserve matters should the application be approved, but it's a wide range of things, not just a few saplings, that will be required.
But there will not be much gain for quite some years. Simple answer, yes or no?
There will be gain.
Thank you, that'll do. And I note that the road that runs through the site ends up to the field that you're going to petition off with this new hedge on the western side. Are you intending on developing that area as well?
There's no intention. If there was,
absolutely none whatsoever.
I can't say what will happen in the future.
Of course not. Thank you.
I can't predict the future.
And the feature entrance that you are proposing, is there something the matter with the entrance to the village at the moment?
No, I can't say there's anything wrong with the appearance of the.
How will the feature entrance sort of be erected?
So there are plans. I don't think Nick's got them on the, which I have got, I think, a copy of them. There are specific sort of gateway entrances and features.
Thank you. Ecological gain. Now, I don't know how, as a developer, you can sit there and talk about ecological gain when you're going to cover this field in housing and tarmac.
So as required and as has been stated, all new applications are required to deliver biodiversity gain.
We've discussed.
We have been through the defrometric. It has been provided. Your ecology consultants have confirmed and are happy with what we've provided, that there will be a 50% gain in biodiversity habitats and a 16% gain in hedgerow.
You know, I can understand the difference between good land and tarmac. Thank you very much indeed. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Cross. Councillor Payne.
When you were speaking, you mentioned when you were speaking, you mentioned that you would be providing a pedestrian walkway by the bridge, I think it was on Cold Overton Road. But you didn't make any mention of providing the crossing on the A606. You are providing that as well?
That's already secured through the first application for the 18.
All right,
so
thank you.
That's coming forward.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Andrew Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Green, obviously, we're duty bound with presumption in favour of sustainable development. What sort of renewable energy, etc., are you going to be using in this development to make it sustainable?
At present, the details are for a reserved matters stage. Obviously, Nick has already mentioned the new building regs this year that will obviously come into force for this development. But in terms of specifics, I can't give you any, unfortunately.
Any others? Councillor Cross.
Just, have you discussed this plan with the local parish council?
Yes, we approached the parish council back end of autumn, early winter last year, to discuss it with them. Myself and the developers have been in regular contact with the parish council on the initial application for the 18 that has already been approved. That was approved unanimously back in October 20, I believe, and have been working with them on the design of that. So yes, we did approach them to discuss.
On the earlier?
No, we held a meeting 6 months ago, maybe a little bit longer, where the outline application for the 18 was discussed, and specifics on the design of that, as well as this site and this application.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. In that case, thank you very much, Mr. Oh, sorry, Councillor Ball.
I thought you were looking to my right. I'm not sure, Mr. Chairman, whether this is specifically a question for Mr. Hodgett or actually Mr. Green, but I'll go through Mr. Green and then you can correct me. Mention was made by our officers and along the frontage of Cold Overton Road of a strong hedge. The ongoing requirement to maintain that is with the owner of the land. The plan is not too clear. This is why I ask.
I believe so.
You believe so, but this point has not been discussed or taken into consideration, and it's part of your proposal. I'm thinking of the long-term maintenance of this strong hedge because of the benefits that are being actually stated. I want to feel comfortable that that is going to be there for the next 20 years. And it's right close to the road. And there is a cost to this, as many fellow farmers will know, with correct hedge laying for the continuity and not just the let. So that's one, and I'll throw in the other one, but of course I think this is a given. Obviously the new hedge that is going to be partitioned down and leave the acreage to the left, you're talking of course 10 years for any new hedge to come into any substantial sort of size. But my concern really is back to Cold Overton Road. I want to feel comfortable that there is something in place, Mr. Chairman, that hedge is going to be there, not just for the next 20 years, but ongoing. And I'm looking to the maintenance and who is going to pay.
Mr. Green, if you would like to come in, I was also going to ask Mr. Hodgett if that should be there as another condition. But the ownership is clearly important as well as the liability.
To the best of my understanding, the ownership is with the landowner and will be managed as such. Obviously, through any reserved matters, there will be a landscaping plan, a landscaping management plan, and the maintenance of that will be covered accordingly.
Thank you very much indeed. I think that's got as far as we can at this point. Thank you very much, Mr. Green. Members, I am now happy to open it to debate. Oh, sorry, Councillor Oxley.
I was going to start the debate. And this,
saying in the absence of the board member, not technically the absence, but saying, please do.
thank you. Now, forgive me if I'm wrong on this. I seem to remember, whilst it does say there's no planning history on this site, I do seem to remember that we did actually consider housing application on this field a while back, because I have a very clear memory about talking about a footpath across the bridge. And I don't think it's the field where the 18 are going to go up. I think it's actually this field, but it does say no planning history. So I don't know if Mr. Hodgett would be able to advise us on that.
Yeah, there was discussion about making access over the bridge on the existing outline permission site, but for some reason the highway officer and manager, who have changed 3 or 4 times since then, didn't think it was feasible. But following the survey that's been carried out by the current developer, it's quite clear that it is feasible, and not only feasible, but it would also enable traffic calming measures to slow traffic coming into the village as well. History on the site, I do recall reading the planning statement, and I think you may be correct in that there has been applications on this site going back. I'm not sure what date they were, but they were refused at that time because obviously circumstances were different. They were premature to they were outside the plan limit to development when the local plan was in force, when we had a 5-year land supply. That's the crucial difference now that we haven't. And I think if we were clear that we currently had a 5-year supply, then this application wouldn't have been before you. It would have been refused under delegated powers. But whatever the circumstances were then, and I think I'm right in saying there was refusals, but the circumstances are certainly very different for this application today.
So yes,
Carry on, Councillor.
So I wasn't wrong. I do remember, as I say, someone who's been on the committee since 2005. I got a very clear recollection of discussing this particular piece of ground. And whilst I appreciate at the time we did have a 5-year housing supply and an extant local plan, I think it would have helped if we actually had it on the papers that there has been some history on this field. And perhaps we can take note of that for future applications when they come in. And I do, as I say, I do remember at the time it was refused because, as I say, it was a field in open countryside, well outside the plan limits of development of Langham. And it was, I can't remember exactly, but I know that the highways department weren't that happy with coming off of Cold Overton Road. But
I think, to be quite honest, I'll look to legal advice here. I think we have to treat this as hearsay for the purposes of this determination.
Okay, I'll take that on.
Yeah.
I think really what we just got to consider is what we're just considering what was before us, but I take on board completely that we should have been aware of the planning history as well, that obviously Nick Hodgett has advised you all in the meeting, so obviously you've been made aware of it, but we are just considering this site and this particular application today.
I do, yeah, I do appreciate that totally. I just, as I say, I just wanted to clarify the point that we have looked at in the past, and I wanted to make that point. So yeah,
anyway, please carry on with the rest. Yeah.
I also would like to know, given the fact that so much emphasis is being placed on our housing numbers, how far we've got down the road as far as the housing allocation. Are we close to the 5-year supply yet?
The impression in the report it was 3.4 years.
It's still 3.4. The actual figure is going to be reassessed by the planning policy team at the end of this month. But the information I was given by them is that they don't anticipate in having gone up very much because not an awful lot has been approved since the last time it was done. So if there is any improvement, it will certainly be nowhere near 5 years again.
Yeah. And I don't, as I say, I don't want to start getting into the detail of that, but our existing plan does go up until 2026, as I understand it. And we do have housing applications coming in on stream, and we have been agreeing housing applications steadily. So I think it would help if we did have an up-to-date number, but as I say, if it isn't available, then I appreciate that. Okay, thank you.
Other members? Councillor Andrew Brown.
Am I right in thinking there's no shop in Langham? And the second question is, what's the frequency of the bus service? Because I know there was several blue dots on the map, which I think were bus stops. Just wondered how many buses there are, because I'm currently struggling to see this as sustainable. So do we know the frequency of
Have
buses?
we got that information, Mr. Hodgett?
Not to hand, no. I know the bus from Nottingham through Melton comes through there, and whether one of the Rutland buses goes through, I'm sorry, I don't know.
I've just been advised that if the Royal Council would like to enlighten us, that is perfectly permissible. I can't take a member of the public, but yes.
I believe there's an
Sorry, I'm Brown at the moment still. Yeah, oh, you're happy?
My question.
It was a point of information. It is the RF1 comes through from Melton to Corby. It does go through Langham. It's an hourly service, and I think the last bus goes through at about 6 o'clock.
Other members? Councillor Paul Brown, sorry, get my Browns in order, yes.
I'm obliged to remember the name. The parish council representative said that that their neighbourhood plan was about ready, going to be probably in April, and that the NPPF said that we should listen to that when it was close. Is that correct?
Mr. Hodgett?
Because if the neighbourhood plan is, we should listen to that, then that is pretty well of a strong card to play. And the second point was, there is a bridge, and it's quite a narrow bridge, and I think there's just enough room for 2 vehicles going either side. If it shrunk by 1.7 meters, how is that going to be? I mean, how is it going to be satisfactory? How are you going to get a free flow of vehicles? Is it going to be taken off the other side, expanded to cope with it? Or are we going to have traffic lights to go from one to the other?
I think we'd better deal with each question in turn. Okay. So if we could deal with the April or the likely April.
I've left that slide on the screen, particularly with regard to the bottom paragraph, which is the comments from the planning policy manager and whether or not the regulation 16 consultation has started. The planning policy manager told me a few days ago that the review has not reached its statutory consultation under Reg 16, so it's not advanced in its preparation. And until that is complete, we don't know whether there are any unresolved objections. So the advice from the planning policy manager is that the emerging neighbourhood plan should carry no weight.
Yes, please do.
I just want to clarify to members, it's not no weight. Obviously, you've got an emerging neighbourhood plan, so I wouldn't want you to take that it can't be given any weight. It's just that obviously it's for the decision maker, which is for you this evening, to how much weight you do put on that neighbourhood plan. And as Nick has said, that it's about, has it been tested? Is there still opportunity for there to be objections to it? It's all of those things that you've got to take into account. So what I'm saying is, I don't think it, a judgment, I mean, it's my judgment, but it's not significant weight can be given, but it's not no weight. And I must make that clear. It isn't no weight.
Thank you. No, I'm very sorry. I cannot take members of the public. No, I'm sorry. I cannot take members of the public. If the ward member chooses to put a question, I will take it. Councillor Hemsley.
It is now under section 16, when the information is given to Mr. Hodgett, it wasn't, but it has been submitted now to Rutland County Council and is in process. And it is, there are as many adjustments to it as there was the previous neighbourhood plan. So there are unlikely to be objections, but it is in process.
So if I can put it in layman's terms, it's about at the 11th hour of 6 and 16.
Probably 10 minutes past now.
Thank you very much. And we've now got your second question, which is about the width of the road as a result of the proposed extension of the.
Yes, Chairman, I indicated it on the slides. I'm afraid they're very slow at the moment, so I'm not going to go back and find it. But the existing carriageway on where the bridge is 5.6 metres at the moment. There's a 1.7 grass verge on the southern side, and there's a 600 concrete verge on the northern side. The intention is to widen that concrete verge to a 2-metre footpath, to retain a 4-metre carriageway, and to have a give way system whereby traffic coming into the village has to stop and give way to that coming out. Similar to that's happened on other places around Oakham.
Thank you. Councillor. Yes, certainly, Councillor Paul.
Sorry. And the cost for this is going to be within the agreement with the developer?
Yes, the developer would have to provide that.
The full cost?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Cross.
On that very point about the footpath, I understood from the earlier presentation that the footbridge was going to be constructed on the outside of the bridge. The fact that that bridge is now going to be narrowed to traffic brings a whole new dimension onto this whole matter. I don't know what other members thought was going to be constructed.
The width between the two parapets of the bridge is 7.9 metres overall. So on this side, the footpath from the new access to the development would emerge and would carry on as a new 2-metre footpath along this side. And then that grass verge would become footpath to join onto the existing tarmac footpath, which is from that point there onwards into the village. This side would remain as it is, as a grass verge, and it would retain a 4-metre road in between with the giveaway schemes, as you've seen in several places elsewhere.
Right, Mr. Chairman. Why was it not deemed possible to put this footpath on the other side of that brick wall, for number one? Narrowing roads is all well and good, but our council seemed intent on widening roads in the countryside to make them more of a racetrack. Now, you start narrowing that piece there, and I use it nearly every day, and it'll be a nightmare. I'm sorry. That's my point.
Councillor Payne.
Sorry. Can I answer Councillor Cross's
yes, certainly.
When the application for the outline scheme, which has already been granted, was considered, and as I said, the Highway Authority at that time didn't think it was feasible to get a narrowing on the road side of the bridge. The developer actually looked at suspending a footpath on the stream side of the parapet wall, but where it would have landed on the eastern side towards the village, it could only land on the private land belonging to that bungalow at the end there. Yeah. So the only way that you can achieve it is to bring it out this side of the parapet and connect it onto the highway verge and footpath further on.
Or speak nicely to the owner of that piece of land.
Yeah, you can't rely on that though, Chairman.
No, you can't. You can always compulsory purchase it.
Sorry.
St George's.
Your microphone is still on, Councillor Cross. Councillor Payne.
Sorry, can I just clarify though, that has been narrowed as a traffic calming measure. Is that correct?
Yes, the road would be narrowed at that point over the bridge by building the footpath out and leaving one width carriageway so that traffic coming into the village would stop at this side at a give way line, allowing priority for vehicles leaving the village.
Okay. Thank you.
similar to Great Casterton and Brunston Road in Oakham.
I'm sorry, I'm going to labour this. Did the village want traffic calming? Because if they did not, the only reason that traffic calming is going on is to facilitate this erection of buildings in open countryside.
That was a question. I thought it was a statement.
I'm afraid, Mr. Chairman, that this development is totally unacceptable because at the end of the day, it is in open countryside. We need farmland to feed the population. It may not seem very much when you walk across an arable field, but when you understand the number of people that feeds, you realize that it does have great importance. Then we come to the fact of the village, the entrance to the village. We have already allowed a little bit of development tucked in behind there, which was already outside the permitted development. And this extra development is, I'm afraid, a bridge too far. And I'm afraid I cannot, unfortunately, support the officer's recommendation to build in open countryside.
Thank you, Councillor Cross. Is that your?
Well, I'll switch off now.
Thank you. Councillor Oxley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I say, I have very real problems with this application. A number of reasons. First of all, as has been said, it is in open countryside and it is outside the plan limits of development of the village. And whilst it abuts a permission which was given to build a smaller site, we're talking about 50 houses going onto a field which will significantly increase the size of Langham. And I know I have mentioned the history, but I can't again see any reason why we should give permission when in the past, I understand we had the local plan and we had the housing supply and everything else, but we gave good reasons to refuse it last time. And I'm having a real problem seeing the difference between then and now once again. And whilst, as I say, I appreciate the fact that we do need to have a stronger housing supply, and developers are coming in and looking to develop on greenfield sites, such as this one, because they see a bit of a gap in provision in Rutland. But I still think that we should be trying as best we can to protect certain areas from development as a cushion until we can get our local plan back up and running again. That being said, when a planning inspector looks at it, it all hinges on their decision. And that's what we are wrestling with this evening. It's a question of giving permission to a piece of ground which our officers recommend approval, which we patently do not approve, but we have been put into a very difficult position because we know that with that, it will be incredibly difficult for us to overturn a planning inspector's decision. And so, I'll wait to hear what everybody else has to say, if anybody else is going to have anything to say, but I'm struggling with this one. I really am. I can see the merits of the traffic calming on that stretch of road, and it will allow access to that part of the village. But as I say, I can't see how we can reasonably give permission, in my opinion, and but we won't have no choice.
Mr. Chairman, we have, as a planning committee, we have history on our side in Rutland. We have always met the allocations and increased. In fact, we have built more than has been required over a great many years. The fact that we might be down at the moment to 3.4 years, I do not think we should give any credence to whatsoever, because things will move at quite a fast rate over the new local plan and what have you. So I think we can lie safe in our beds knowing that whatever decision we make tonight will be upheld by any planning inspector.
I think that is probably preempting. Sorry.
I think
Were you waiting? I'll take Councillor Beggy and then Councillor Ball.
Thank you. I think I'm going to stick to the law and policy. I think what this boils down to is the weight of the neighbourhood plan. There seems to be a little bit of contention between whether it's gone to Reg 16 or not. I have to take the ward members' point that it probably has gone to Reg 16. We just have to decide how much weight this has to be. I'm minded that a lot of work has gone into neighbourhood plans, and we need to, where possible, stand by them. I think I am minded as far as using material planning considerations, as opposed to rhetoric, that we put a lot of weight behind that neighbourhood plan and try to show people that they are worth the effort, and that they do control development around our villages. And it is the only value judgment that I think we can make tonight is, as Mr. Hodgett has said, we have to decide how much weight we give that plan. And I'm minded to possibly to give it slightly more than others would currently.
Thank you very much, Councillor Baker. Councillor Ball.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. May I just go through a couple of questions that I have before I would ask to perhaps sum up on my own view on this development. It's really just for Mr. Hodgett. I think the strong hedgerow, am I to believe that if it is approved, there will be conditions that will protect this going forward? And if so, can I ask, what is the sort of condition that we will have on long-term protection?
Yeah, the detailed landscaping scheme would obviously come as part of the reserve matters when the retention of that hedge will form part of the landscaping scheme. There is a condition recommended on the agenda now, I think condition 11, which talks about existing trees that are retained being fenced off and protected before development starts, and that could easily be and probably should be reworded to include existing hedgerows as well.
And I say that, Mr. Chairman, because as you know, within this county, we are plagued, unfortunately, with conditions that are set. And particularly in my own ward, we are continually chasing up developers of yesteryear to maintain hedgerows, trees, etc. And we have a particular problem in North Luffingham every few years, but that's fine. Thank you, Mr. Hodgett. And this again, apologies. I am right in saying that we haven't apportioned the position of affordables within this plan at the moment. There is the quantity, but they're not specified on that plan, or are they?
They're indicated on the drawing on the screen where the brown units are in the central area.
Yes. Okay.
And one to the on the single story bit, but they would be delivered through Section 106 agreement. Which would include the details of their tenure, the number of bedrooms, and at what point in the development they would be delivered.
Being rude, I'm happy with that. Apologies, I was looking at the drawing and I think my eyesight and whatever. My only query with that, Mr. Hodgett, I thought when we were talking about developments within this county, as to affordable, we were really going to advocate a pepper pot distribution of affordables within future developments. We did this, if you remember, when we did a lot of work on the officers' mess plan at St. George's. And that was distinctly pepper pot and not in blocks as per theirs. I am a little disappointed at that. That is just merely a comment.
Chairman,
okay, thank you, Mr.
Yeah, just to make the point that we've normally said that they shouldn't be in clusters of more than 15, and I think there's probably about 12 there with 2 other separate ones. So the providers don't like them separated individually all over the site for management purposes. So we've always negotiated on this figure of about 15.
No, I accept the professional view. I just know that we were discussing and even some national policy. I thought there was a drift, a direction to actually it would be much better if affordable were positioned within developments. Can I just, the other question, how far is this site from the 50-acre solar farm that was passed, please? I know I went on the site visit and forgive me, but I can't quite locate this particular site with the solar farm. Talking about glare, if you remember at the time, and that had to be taken into consideration, and it was something to be taken into consideration.
The solar farm site is a little further out to the west. I've not got a dimension for it, I'm afraid, but there wouldn't be any issue with glint and glare on this site from the solar farm because of the amount of treed areas that there is in between.
Yeah, and treed areas, of course, it does vary between the summer and winter conditions, but there you are. And D, I've got another one where we were talking, we heard from the parish councillor there, we were talking about the numbers that within their plan, and if this is approved, it would go to the 100% figure. We know that our primary school is landlocked. When I held the portfolio, we were struggling on numbers. What allowances have we made for the impact on future education within the village as regards to primary, please?
Mr. Hodgett.
Well, as members are aware, the payment towards education all comes through the SIL payment from all new developments now, and that would be apportioned as required by the Education Authority through the SIL payment. So there's the beauty of SIL is that from a planning point of view, we don't have to get involved in these negotiations for individual services anymore. It all comes in one.
You're quite right. I should have elaborate a little bit more. The problem we have with that is, you know, we end up busing children. If we can't provide within the village, we end up busing, and that is something which perhaps is not desirable, but I do take your professional answer there. And just one other point for clarification. If we take, and it doesn't matter whether it's 140 or 100, but if we take our build requirements going forward as 130 a year or 140 a year, when as a planning committee, we've approved 60 houses or 70 houses or whatever, or 60, but surely every 65 houses or every 70 houses is going to put 6 months on our 5-year or towards our 5-year requirement. I think you, and again, we were only quoting officers outside of your discipline, but when it said it didn't alter very much, I just wanted some clarification on that, because for me, every 65 or every 70 is 6 months.
Yeah, unfortunately, the figures don't work as simply as that. And I must admit, I don't profess to know how it works exactly either. But first of all, you have to take into account the houses that are built in the interim period as well. So they come off the figure being replaced by new requirements, if you see what I mean. And it's all worked out based on how many would be delivered in the 5-year period. So it's not when you approve a scheme of 200, say, they won't all be counted in the 5-year period, so they don't come into the equation yet. Not all of them anyway. The developer has said that, you know, pursuant to getting a reserve matters approval, he anticipates that this site would be built out within 5 years. So
That's fine. I'll
There you
give
go.
way to Councillor Brown, but I would like to just say
Yeah.
one final summing up, Chairman. Thank you.
Can I start off just by clarifying with the legal officer a point? My understanding of neighbourhood plans is as the following. A made plan has full weight. In fact, we've just seen that in the appeal that has been rejected in Barradon against the neighbourhood plan there. The inspector was very clear. The neighbourhood plan is full weight because it's made. It was only made less than 2 years ago. The next level is the plan would have significant weight, and that would be when it is post-inspection, but pre-referendum. The next level is post-Reg 16, where it has substantial weight. Pre-Reg 16, it has less than substantial weight. So each time it goes through, and at pre-consultation, it has some weight, but has very limited weight. Now, that's my understanding as a neighbourhood planning champion of the position. I'd just like to clarify that with the planning solicitor.
Yeah, Councillor Brown, I couldn't have put it more succinct
So-
myself. That's exactly it.
Thank you. So at this point in time, it has less than substantial weight. In fact, it has some weight, but less than substantial. So I just want to make that point to members on that. I think the point Mr. Hodgett clarified on the 5-year housing supply, it's a sausage machine. You put some in at one end and the stuff getting pumped out at the other end all the time. And I think as you understand, the farmers understand that. Okay, excellent. I'm glad that's the case. Just looking at this, in my view, it's a finely balanced decision. And I've been through in a lot of detail. I went back to the issues and options site appraisal by the parish council, sorry, the neighbourhood planning group back in 2017, looked at the final document, went through it in some detail. And in fact, there are only a number of red items on it, which make it not suitable. One was there are no facilities at 800 metres of the furthest point, and that's in relation to the access. And of course, if you actually measure it, there are facilities at 800 metres, but I'll come back to that in a minute. I'll go through each one in particular. First of all, it's grade 3 agricultural land. It's not the best land in the world, but it's not the worst land in the world. It's the same as everyone else's in East Midlands.
It grows food.
It grows food, absolutely, and one doesn't dispute that. So it's grade 3. So that's an equals for me. It had local support against it at this stage. 2/3 of the people were against it, 1/3 in favour. That's a potential negative. There was an hourly bus service less than 800 metres away, which is certainly a positive, and certainly more positive than some of the applications with recent weeks. There were possible issues of water and sewage, but I believe those are overcome by what I've seen in the documentation that I've read. So that's quite clear. Accessibility, according to the neighbourhood plan, is moderate and therefore is an equals. In that original neighbourhood plan, which is still the valid neighbourhood plan, I believe there was 58 homes identified. By including this one, it would be 68 homes, and therefore it's, in my view, an equals again. It's in the countryside and greenfield, a negative point. The road issues, it's interesting that there's a clear access onto Coverton Road. There is a facility to reduce speeding coming into the village. If there's not a problem there, I think the portfolio holder for highways will be excited that they can take that SID away, the speed indicator device away, because it's clearly not needed if there's no speeding coming into the village. But I think let's leave that as an equals. In this document, the issues and options document, there's no mention of issues on the 606 junction. There was on the Cold Overton Road, but not on the 606 junction. The school is within 800 metres, which is, if people remember, that's the number that was in the Cottesmore neighbourhood plan. It's all flat. Medical facilities are accessible. I won't go into the quality of those medical facilities just at this point in time, but there's a report coming out on that very shortly. I think one of the big negatives for me, and it was raised by Councillor Brown, and thank you for that. And that is the shop. There used to be a shop in Langham. There's now not a shop in Langham. And I believe also you've lost the vegetable facility in Langham as well. So the nearest shop is in fact the supermarkets at Aldin Little, some 2 kilometres away. That is not a good position. However, there's a pub within 800 metres, a fairly good pub that does good pies apparently. Rights of way are not affected. Flooding is not an issue. I think what we've seen from the documentation is that they're going to keep it down to, I think it's 5 litres a second coming out the site. And there's no concerns again in this in relation to the flooding. I've mentioned the status of the local plan. It's at Reg 9, Reg 16, so it's less than substantial weight. Interestingly, there's only been 14 objections submitted on this particular application, which is always of interest. But looking back to the neighbourhood plan, there was a couple of issues on the highways. Again, no mention of Cold Overton Road. There was a crossing requested in policy PSS 1B, which of course will be delivered at the range or just beside the range in phase 1, and there's traffic coming in that. I find this a really close one to call. It's a low density. I think it's only 15 houses per hectare. That's what I worked out. So it's a low density, which is appropriate for edge of village. It's not high density. I think it is in the round a difficult one to call. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Anyone else who hasn't spoken who would like to speak again, or any new point? He commented and like.
I would just like to.
Sorry, yes, Councillor Bull.
Sorry, having asked the questions, I would just like to give my own opinion. It's very clear for me, members, that I cannot support the application which is before us. Hearing from the ward member, hearing from the councillors and looking at the paperwork before us, it's clearly in open countryside. It's green belt, and in old terminology, it's outside the village fence. And that to me is absolutely clear. I do not see, and it may be my interpretation, but I do not, and I apologise if I'm wrong, I do not see the footpath over the bridge as a plus. I see it as a negative. If this development doesn't go ahead, you won't need this chicane, whatever. I am concerned about the long-term effects when we have the 50-acre solar farm as to, is there any hidden problems that we are not aware of to this development? I am certainly concerned about the impact on the education. And more importantly, to me, is that we are in place to take notice of the views of the residents. And that can go back to Prime Minister Mr. Cameron, if you remember, who came forward with the policy that we should be listening to residents and the people living in this area. And as to whether this, their particular local plan is a few weeks away from being a rubber stamp, I am quite happy that it is a very professional plan and is covering the needs of the village. And that for me is really counting up why I cannot support the application before us, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bull. Again, I haven't actually commented at all, and I'm very much in sympathy with what 2 or 3 members have said, that this is not a straightforward decision by any manner of means. And I'm trying just for a minute to think of someone who is not, as members of this committee are, committed to a Rutland that we know and respect and wish to continue, but somebody who's coming in from the outside. In other words, a planning inspector. I don't share your sanguine opinion, Councillor Cross, of the decision that inspector might make. If I were looking at this on a plan. It is outside plan limits of development. I entirely agree with what is being said, but it's also, if you look at it, not sticking out into the countryside in quite that way, because the whole large Ranksper development is there on one side of it. And if you look, one of the alterations in the lifetime of this application was to move some of the houses further away from that development. I'm being devil's advocate at the moment. I would say too that the difficulty, and the parish council representative made it very clear, of being able to get the deadlines there. But I do take Councillor Gordon Brown's point, Councillor Beggy's point, about how much weight we then give to that. Now, you won't get any stronger advocate than me over neighbourhood plans. I think they are vital to Rutland, and I think we've got some very good examples, not least the Langham one, where the wishes of the local population as to the sort of village that they and their descendants live in becomes paramount. And so therefore, I entirely agree with that. And this is my final note of caution. If you look at those policy, which we've had up on the screen, the paragraphs 11 and 14, it's a matter of proportionality. This is where I feel that an outsider might struggle to see that there was any harm to the community when what you're getting is a 10% increase. And that is my note of caution. Where is the harm on that thing? I have no hesitation at all in what my heart says. It is simply, I think I should remind the committee of the tightrope we are treading. Having said that, I would look for a proposal. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, your words have been taken on board. The notes of caution. If we remain cautious all our lives, we will achieve nothing whatsoever. We, sitting here, are in a way the guardians of Rutland and the future developments therein. Therefore, we carry a heavy responsibility to take note of what you have said, but in my book, to take more note of what the locals, the Rutlanders, say and have demonstrated that they wish to see in the future. As I've said before.
Sorry, Councillor, I think we were going for a motion. You were asking somebody to
Building up to it. This is my moment.
Councillor Cross, come on, propose.
You've completely
apologise, Councillor Cross.
Councillor Cross.
But never mind. I'm afraid I would like to propose, Mr. Chairman, that we refuse this application, and we refuse it in line with the items laid out in the Langham neighbourhood plan. Also, we should note that it is not sustainable. There is no village shop. Medics, doctors, oh, you can reach the surgery.
Councillor Cross, I want to get to a resolution. You have proposed. Yes. I'm looking for a seconder. I've got Councillor Bull. I'm now asking for reasons for refusal, and Councillor Cross has already indicated that the submission made by the Langham Parish Council should be first and foremost. I think you then said that the sustainability aspect was a second.
Yes.
second one.
Definitely.
Are there any other points that
And
members?
it is in open countryside, and I think that should be underlined.
We just need
Sorry.
we just need to really go for the clear reasons. I mean, are we
Clear.
saying that we're giving more weight to the emerging neighbourhood plan? And that is I mean, obviously we've got to just look at the planning, because you're saying, because the first one was submission made by the parish in terms of the paragraph 14 and paragraph
There are
11.
some more than relevant points.
And
made
that we
by
are giving more weight
Langham
to
Council.
the emerging neighbourhood
Yeah.
plan. So that's one of the reasons. And the second one was it's obviously on outside the limits of development.
Yes.
Well outside.
Outside
then-
will do.
You're saying, and then you've obviously the third one is that it's not a sustainable it's not a sustainable development on the basis of, are we saying because of the shop?
Well, I'm sorry, there's no shop there, and I believe that this committee must take on board the health of our population. People
But-
cannot even see a
I'm just
doctor.
trying to
So I think
get-
that has to be
Councillor
brought in.
Cross,
There is
Councillor Cross.
education as well. I'm
You-
sorry,
you-
Mr.
No, you've
Chairman.
made your point, but what I want to be clear with the officers, this is going to go to an inspector.
Good.
We've got, yes, I kind of agree. We haven't even voted yet, but assuming that we voted in the way that I think it's going to go, that we've got to have a very clear submission to the inspector. That is what we're simply establishing now.
Well, sustainability is quite an important matter as well. So we can fluff that up.
Yes.
Whether you include my doctors and the education is up to you, but I would, because it should be highlighted, because it is very important.
Yep.
For sustainability.
Yep.
And so sustainability, and I'm just going to check with the officer in a second.
Right.
All these things down. I want to
Be as watertight as possible on this.
Would you like any more?
Councillor Gordon Brown.
I could look to the legal officer and suggest that we don't talk about plan limits of development in relation to this, because those are no longer valid, I believe, under P11D, in paragraph 11D. I would talk about open countryside.
Yes.
So if you talk about open countryside, I think if you are planning to vote in that particular way, then that's the wording I would suggest you use. The other thing I would stick with is definitely the shop. It is a significant issue because you are going to have to travel. Okay, there's an hourly bus service, unlike some other applications looked at recently. So there's a slight argument against that, but serious question on it.
Thank you very much.
That's very useful. I think we have now got, but I really wanted to be very clear on the reasons for refusal, assuming, as I'm now going to take the vote, that we are minded to refuse it. So those in favour of the proposal, which has been proposed and seconded, that we refuse the application, please indicate.
5, Chair.
And those against?
3, Chair. 4, sorry.
4.
That's everyone, I believe, Chair.
Mm.
Yes.
Yes, that is duly. Yes, that is duly carried for refusal. We accordingly see what happens. Yes, and thank you very much for the members of the public who attended. There are a couple of other items just to deal with. I did mean to say right at the beginning of the meeting that our planning manager, Justin Johnson, unfortunately has COVID at the moment, and I'm sure you would wish to send our very best wishes to him for a speedy recovery. And thank you to Mr. Hodgett, who has filled in this evening, as well as being the case officer. So I will just pause for a second if people wish to leave, and that is, and then we've just got a couple of other things, the appeals, and Tom has got one bit of business admin just at the end. Okay, Nick, if we go straight to appeals.
Yeah, sorry, Chairman, I'm not sure how much detail we normally go into on these, but as you can see, there's been one appeal lodged since the previous meeting on Main Street in Empingham. And there's quite a comprehensive list of reasons for refusal that was set out there. And it was to demolish an outbuilding and construct a new detached dwelling. It's been refused for those reasons that are set out. I think one of the adjacent properties is a listed building, and the impact on those and the impact on the setting of various heritage assets. So there's quite a comprehensive list of reasons for that. On the decisions that have come in, the one at Larchfield Oakham was, it's a house that has a gable end onto the front of the road. So gable end front and back, and this was for a continuation backwards for a 2-storey extension that the inspector found the impact of which would, along the boundary it was, the inspector found that it would unnecessarily impact on residential amenity by overlooking and overbearing of the surrounding properties. The one at Main Street Barrow, I think this is a property that's got quite a long history. There was 2 elements to it. One was dismissed, which was for a large first floor metal construction on the rear, which would have carried solar panels and had batteries on a first floor, on a ground floor roof. And the inspector, part of his reasoning there was that access to that roof to maintain the batteries would have been in contravention of a previous condition when it was approved to say there should be no access to that balcony because of overlooking neighbouring properties. And he felt that it was an incongruous extension at the rear, but he allowed it insofar as it related to a front dormer window and a heat pump, which clearly weren't very controversial. And then the final one, this is another one in Cottesmore where the inspector relied on neighbourhood plan policy, and this is one where he did have regard to paragraph 11D, but he didn't feel in this case that the provision of this, was it 1 or 2 houses? He didn't feel that the benefit of the new development would outweigh the harm that it would do in terms of the setting of the village, the conservation area. That was all, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On the whole, very satisfactory.
Most satisfactory, Mr. Chairman, and I'd like to congratulate the officers on that first.
Yep. Thank you very much. Not any enforcement updates this meeting. I'm going to close the meeting formally, but if you could just say the proposed presentation